Good afternoon, everybody. This is About the Labor Live. I am back and tried to force a cough to elicit sympathy. I have been sick the last week or so. I also wanted to take some time to decompress about the season, get my thoughts together. But despite my ability to create my own gravitational pull, I was actually born relatively premature. Good afternoon, everybody. This is About the Labor Live. I am back. Sorry about that. I just got a phone call. I get one call a week, and it just happened to happen in the first few seconds of the show. Like I said, I've been off. You might notice I have a cough. I've been sick. I think the tension from the season boiled over, and then it mixed with my long story short, I was born super premature. I was like the size of a peanut, and I also had jaundice. So I kind of looked like a Packers fan. And so I tend to get bronchitis relatively easily because my lungs weren't fully developed. Apparently, like my brain. But yeah, I wanted to hop back on the show at 3 o'clock for once. I apologize for my absence. I hope you guys still want to be my friend. Just did a couple shows. Did the Scoop on KLGR Radio this afternoon at noon. That should be live in a few minutes. I also just posted the interview that we had with Tommy Kramer on my podcast Morning Joe's. You can find that on VikingsTerritory.com. He's hosting a Super Bowl bash at the Mermaid in Mounds View. There's going to be a few Vikings legends there. Scott Studwell, Keith Millard, Carl Lee, so on and so forth. There'll be live music, including a Journey cover band, lots of drinks, lots of food. You can watch the Super Bowl amongst Vikings legends. I might even be there. So if you go to VikingsTerritory.com, click on that podcast, you'll see where to buy tickets for that. It should be a really good time. We also had Mike Tice on Morning Joe's last week. That was a really, really interesting interview. We are hosting his new podcast, Odds and Ends with Mike Tice, on VikingsTerritory.com as well, which is kind of a strange thing to think about. He's going to actually wear a Vikings Territory and Purple PTSD shirt in an upcoming show of his, which is mind-boggling to me as a guy who was in college during the Tice era despite my smooth skin. And really, I don't know, sometimes, and I'm not complaining, but running a website and doing lots of shows, you get really caught up in things like, oh, the site is having server issues, or I need to add this new thing because that's what everyone's doing, and if I don't do that, so on and so forth, and you kind of lose perspective on the fact that, I started Purple PTSD in 2015. For like the first year, it was just me shouting into the wind. I never fully expected it to turn into anything. I was doing a lot more internet-based marketing stuff. That's kind of my jam. And to think of going from that to having the coach of the former head coach of the Vikings wearing your shirt, it means a lot to me. It's just it's really, really, really crazy. So I wanted to just shout out Mike Tice and his show Odds and Ends. It's really great. You'll find it on YouTube and also Spotify and Apple podcasts. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know. Any coaching news yet? 10K Bears just asked. No, but from what I've heard, the inside scoop, Kubiak should be the offensive coordinator, either him or his son. The main thing Zimmer wants is continuity. Looking at the Zimmer era, and this ties in one of the topics from today, which is the fact that the Vikings are discussing an extension with Kirk Cousins. We've really had no continuity on the offensive side of the ball. We've had a handful of coordinators. We've had a handful of quarterbacks. And so I know that with Cousins still having a year left on his contract and the Vikings having really no solution outside of Cousins, there's not like a young up-and-coming backup that's, clipping at Cousins' heels. It makes more sense to keep things as similar to 2018 as possible from a scheme perspective and from a knowledge perspective. You don't want to bring in a guy with a whole new team, a whole new scheme for the offensive line, a whole new offensive playbook. You want to look at, from an internal perspective, what worked, what didn't, and why didn't it work, and how can we get away from that or improve on it. Paul Allen also said that it's essentially going to be Kubiak, or it should be, and so I'm kind of leaning hard on what he says because he has a lot more sources and whatnot than I do, clearly. And so I'm thinking it'll be Kubiak. 10K Beers also asked, do we even need a defensive coordinators because Zimmer just run it himself? Yes and no. If you look at like what George Edwards did, his value, and like anybody who plays under or who coordinates under a coach who calls the plays, like Brad Childress under Andy Reid, their value comes during the week and video and helping with the game plan and finding ways to either mitigate issues the defense has against the scheme they're playing the upcoming week, or to take advantage of weaknesses the offense has. So they do a lot of planning, a lot of week-to-week stuff. Zimmer can't do all of that by himself. But some people are saying like, oh, Romeo Crennel got fired. It's he's not going to bring in anybody who isn't lockstep sold on his scheme. And so to me, I really think that just means they're going to elevate his son, Adam Zimmer, to the defensive coordinator position. That means continuity on defense as well. The players are, for the most part, still there, depending on what happens with Trey Waynes' contract. Xavier Rhodes somehow made the Pro Bowl. Mackenzie Alexander. So I would put money on it being Adam Zimmer. But yeah, we do need one just because of the workload during the week. And they chime in, obviously, during the game and say, this is what I'm seeing. But Zimmer is going to call the plays regardless. So it's a good question because I guess you don't really need one on a during the game basis. But there's just a lot to that as well that they can do, substitutions and all of that. It's just a lot of administrative work during the week and then also during the game that Zimmer can't do all by himself, even though it seems like he really does. But yeah, I'm really for that. I guess I talking about on Morning Joe's. Joe's, he's always kind of the optimist, or at least he likes to take opposing views from what I have. And my point was, I would be totally fine. Talking to Tommy Kramer and to Mike Tice, they both kind of said the same thing. The weakness of the Vikings, pretty obvious, is the offensive line. Tice, I really think you guys should listen to that show. Think what you will about him being a head coach. I thought he got a bad rap. I think he coached under a terrible owner in Red McCombs. I asked him about that. I asked him about Randy Moss being a quote-unquote locker room cancer. I should just really quickly say he said Randy Moss was the hardest working guy he'd ever coached. So there's that. Which actually it means a lot because he retired because he said guys this day and age don't want to be coached. So I think Moss got a bad rap, just like Tice did. If Tice coached under the Wilfs, the Vikings very well could have won a Super Bowl. But McCombs didn't want to spend any money. The defense was garbage, and you can't really do anything about that. In terms of Kubiak and the offensive line and what Tice said, he's not a fan of zone blocking. He said that against powerful defensive fronts, it really has issues schematically with creating clean pockets. That was really kind of scary to me to hear. I mean, I already kind of knew that, but that's Cousins' biggest weakness is pocket presence, sensing pressure. And so it seems like a confluation of two really bad things. I asked him if there's anything they could do to fix that this offseason, perhaps drafting a left tackle, so on and so forth. And his answer was straight up no. I think, again, I don't think he's a big fan of the zone blocking scheme, but look at what the 49ers did to the Packers with the zone blocking scheme and a zone run scheme. They use other schemes, they mix things in and out, but they both come from the same coaching tree, which is Mike Shanahan, Kubiak, and Kyle. And so I do think that, the fact that everyone's talking about the offensive line is pro. I've been talking about it for years. I've been complaining about the lack of investment, the fact that they didn't draft an offensive lineman from 20 2013 to 2017 before the 4th round. Guys like Willie Beavers and David Yankee. And this is what the original point was. I know I'm kind of all over the place here, so I apologize. But I would be fine with the offensive line being an afterthought if the investment that was made in lieu of offensive linemen was good enough to justify that, which is me. What I'm saying is if Zimmer built a defense that was so good that the offensive line being an afterthought didn't matter. I've never seen a Zimmer defense play like this 49ers defense has. And I know sometimes it's unfair to compare your team to the Patriots. Like, well, the Patriots are different. This San Francisco team is playing on a different level. That's what these guys get paid millions of dollars for, to be compared to the best and try to and they get paid to attempt to get to that level. And when you have this much investment, this much continuity, you have this last season you had 8 guys who had been under Zimmer for 5 years, and you don't have a championship level defense, it's frustrating. And so when things on offense, PFF ranked the Vikings pass blocking offensive line as 27th in the league this season. And I don't think a lot of people talked about that this season. They really just looked at Cousins and said, well, Cousins is so bad under pressure, he sucks, or why can't they get Cousins out of the pocket? Really bad in pass blocking situations. And that kind of takes the air out of the room when you look at, well, look how good Brian O'Neill did or Josh Klein did, and look at how many holes they opened. They're great opening holes, especially on the right side. They did what I think they ranked like 15th or 16th overall as a unit, but that was because they were really good opening holes and zone blocking in a run perspective. But when they were pass blocking, they were bad, and that's disconcerting. And I think that again that got lost a lot this season because we didn't so much talk about that as much as Cousins and what Cousins is either bad or why aren't they using Cousins the right way? Why aren't they getting him out of the pocket? At some point, Cousins is going to have to make throws out of the pocket. I mean, outside of like the Ravens and doing RPOs, which is not the way that this Vikings offense runs, you typically want your quarterback to be able to stand in the pocket and make some throws. And that's I'm being facetious a little bit. I mean, he clearly can do that, but when the call to action is always get him out of the pocket, get him out of the pocket, it's not just because he's bad in the pocket, it's because the pocket sucks. And that's both a scheme thing per Tice and just what the unit is not good at. And I think that a lot of that comes from Riley Reif and Pat Elflein, because O'Neill, had a really long streak of not giving up a sack. Klein was solid. Bradbury wasn't exceptional, but he did better than Elflein did the year before. And so the key really comes down to, again, the offensive line, which is something we've talked about every offseason since really before the season that Bradford and company went 5-0, and then the line fell apart, and then they missed the playoffs. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of cap space to add a free agent, at least as of the recording of this show. And so when I see mock drafts and stuff talking about defensive tackles in the first round, they got to go left tackle. They have to. I don't know what you guys feel about that, but again, I just wanted to point out that the offensive line, I think, got by. There wasn't as much criticism as there needed to be about the line's pass blocking abilities or inability to pass block because of a lot of the hate for Cousins, because how Cousins is bad under pressure, because of the bootleg play action rollout stuff, and because they were so good against the run or opening up holes in run blocking that you kind of thought, wow, this unit looks really good. And beyond that, our standards are so damn low in terms of offensive lines that you see stuff like that and you just think it's such a massive improvement when it really, really wasn't, at least in terms of pass blocking. And so I feel like Cousins kind of got a bad rap in that regard. I mean, it's a bad mix. Schematically, it's not great at going against powerful defensive lines and creating pockets. The unit was bad at it. So even at its best, that's its weak point, the scheme of zone blocking. This unit wasn't playing at its best, clearly. 27th in the league. Cousins also wilts under pressure in the pocket, especially from the blind side. And so that's really the story of the entire season right there. That's why you're hearing about the offensive line so much. It also, I mean, they were exposed clearly against the 49ers. And the 49ers, I mean, they have, again, a similar system. So you can do better, but you have to invest in your offensive line. And it's, regardless of what anyone says, has been the last priority for this team under Zimmer. Full stop. And it's really strange because I would argue that the offensive line is by far the most important position group in the entire NFL. Look at what the Niners did against the Packers with guys that were basically journeymen. I would rather have the Niners line and running backs than the Vikings line and Dalvin Cook. And that sounds really stupid, but Raheem Mostert had a record-breaking day behind that line. Sure, the Packers aren't good against the run, but Garoppolo threw, 8 passes? There was a time where he didn't throw a ball for an hour and a half. That because the line was just doing what Zimmer. It's especially frustrating because Zimmer claims to want to run the ball and control the clock and all of that. And to do that, you need an offensive line that, sure, zone blocking means they're maybe lighter and more athletic, but you need powerful, big guys. And in this day and age, in college football, with the lack of real offensive linemen, NFL quality offensive linemen coming out because of the schemes they run, because of spread offenses, and not, there's only a handful of schools that you're going to get really good offensive linemen, Wisconsin being one of them. You can't rely on late round guys. You can't rely on a 7th round guy. You just can't. And so instead, the Vikings thought they could, go through free agency, get guys that were over 30 that were maybe injury prone, hope they stay healthy. That obviously did not happen with guys like Andre Smith or Jake Long. And it's just extremely frustrating because I do these shows all the time. I've been doing morning Joes for years, and we've been talking about the same damn thing over and over again. And it just feels like, okay, the last 2 seasons, they brought in Riley Reef, they brought in Remmers, but they lost Berger and Easton, and instead of drafting interior linemen, they moved Remmers to right guard, and he's never played right guard. He's a tackle. I mean, maybe he played it in college, but he didn't have any experience doing that in the pros. So he was terrible, because of course he would be. I mean, look at Elfline struggling, and he claims that's his natural position. And so it's just extremely frustrating to say stuff like, well, Remmers sucks, that's why. No, it's because Remmers was supposed to be our right tackle, and we took Hughes instead of taking Will Hernandez or any of the 4 or 5 guys that were taken between Hughes and O'Neal that were really good day one starters at guard. I liked the Bradbury pick because I thought that was an improvement to 2 positions. Technically it was because Compton was garbage as well, so you have Elfline there. Bradbury didn't have the season I think people expected him to, but it seems like obviously too little too late because, granted, Klein was hurt a lot, which is a very Vikings thing. They brought him in because he was healthy for a really long stretch, like 5 seasons, and then he misses multiple games for concussions. So, yeah, I just get frustrated with the offensive line. I'm sorry if I'm just being negative and repeating myself, but we're seeing the fruits of what it means to really invest in your offensive line, and it's depressing. I'll see some more comments. Andre Patterson, maybe 10K Beer says for the defensive coordinator position. Yes. I would prefer Patterson over Adam Zimmer just because that just seems like nepotism, and I don't think people would respond positively to that just because I don't think people are very high on Zimmer right now. It would just feel like, okay, Zimmer has learned nothing by these trials and tribulations. There's going to be no changes. Literally, it's his kid. Patterson is kind of the same thing, but at least he has a different last name, if that makes sense. Tanky Beer says, I'm less worried about our tackles than I am the interior of our O-line. I don't know. I think Elfline's a problem. I agree with you that, I mean, O'Neal is the best guy on the line, obviously. I worry about the tackles more because it's harder to find left tackles, obviously. They're very expensive, obviously. And I don't want them to move O'Neal to left tackle. And I have a feeling they're going to because they have a late round, first round pick, and they might feel that they're better off going for a guy on the right side than the left side at whatever pick they have, 27 or whatever. That having been said, I think Klein, outside of injuries, was one of the most underrated players on this team. Him and O'Neal are great. You can build around that. Bradbury is solid, and I think he'll be fine once things solidify on the left side of him. Elfline, it pains me to talk about this because I loved that move. As a rookie, he said that he was more comfortable playing guard, and he had a good rookie year as a center. I mean, he was the best center in the country for a stretch in college, and he was a massive disappointment, clearly. Sorry, people keep calling me. I should have put on Do Not Disturb. Are you guys still here? Let me see. But yeah, it's in terms of the interior, Elfline, I don't know what you do there. I don't know if you just wait on Samia to see what happens there. I'm a little surprised he was as low on the depth chart as he was behind Brett Jones, considering Samia was on the best offensive line in the country at Oklahoma. But I think Elfline is going to be the key, and that's why I'm worried about that, because I don't want O'Neal again to move. Yeah, like you said, we have no money to get anyone in free agency. Rocky523 says, look at Tennessee. They have no wide receivers and a great back and an average QB. Just think what the Vikes could do with that offensive line. Exactly. Thank you, man. That's like a perfect point. Tang, I missed you, man. If you can't tell, I have tuberculosis. I don't know. I completely shut down after that Vikings game, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I have a question for you guys if you're still there, and I apologize for the disruptions. I wish I could turn on Do Not Disturb as I'm sitting here. Anyway. Okay, so I've always struggled with this. Like, when you lose to a team in the playoffs and then they play someone the next week, do you want removing the Packers from the equation? So let's say the Vikings lost to the Niners, and then the Niners went on to play the Saints. Not the Saints, because we hate the Saints. Went on to play, what's a good team that we don't hate in the NFC? The Giants, let's say. Do you want the Niners to win because you want the team that beat you to be the champion, so you can say, well, we lost to the best team in the league? Or do you want that team to lose because you hate them? I've always kind of struggled with that. That having been said, I really thoroughly enjoyed watching the Niners-Packers game. I wrote an article during it, and I was writing a lot about, I was right, Rodgers isn't the same guy. I got a lot of heat for saying that during the season, and he doesn't look that great. Then they had that little mini comeback, and then I was like, maybe I should not say this because I don't want to seem like, I don't know, I was sick, and I didn't want to deal with all of the people saying stuff like the typical Packers stuff. We beat you twice. I married my cousin. My trailer park was hit by a tornado, just typical Green Bay stuff. But it's clear that he's a shell of his former self in Rodgers, and we could talk about that some other time. I love that that's kind of the topic du jour. It's everywhere. I really regret not keeping that in my article, but everyone's basically saying stuff like, Rodgers can't do it by himself anymore. He needs help. He blah, blah, blah. Similar stuff to what they're saying about Brady. But I want to get into what you guys are talking about because that's what this show's about. Tang says the Vikings O-line has been the key issue for years. For people complaining about the burnt toast secondary. I say fix the O-line first. A good offense can bail out a bad defense. Yeah, I mean, especially considering. Okay, so for people freaking out about Cousins, them discussing an extension, of course they're going to do that. That's due diligence. They're not. They have to. He's on the last year of his contract. They have to talk to his agent and say, okay, what do you guys think? What do you want? So on and so forth. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show, so I'm not going to get back into that. But it's also the matter of what else? What other option do the Vikings have at quarterback? Mannion or the draft, because I'm 35 and they've never, outside of maybe Culpepper and Teddy, both injury plagued careers, or careers that were impacted by a knee injury, at least a single injury. Do you have faith in Spielman drafting somebody who not only will develop into a good starter, but will do it very, very quickly? I don't, personally. And so I think that you have to mitigate Cousins' main weakness. I was going to say weaknesses, but mitigate his main weakness, which is happy feet in the pocket, a lack of spider sense. And you can't do that without really investing heavily in the offensive line. I mean, I would love for them to go, left tackle, left guard in the draft, first 2 picks. I have faith in Brzezinski opening up some money somehow. I'm sure Rhodes will take a pay cut, or maybe he'll try to get a boost in his contract because he made the Pro Bowl somehow. If there's ever been an example as to why the Pro Bowl is a joke, that's it right there. I mean, give it to Trey Waynes if you're going to give it to somebody, for the love of God. Rocky says cut Rhodes, restructure Griffin. Oh, cut Rhodes and Everson Griffin and restructure Cousins. I think that's part of the extension talk with Cousins, is perhaps more guaranteed. Well, they can't give him more guaranteed money, but a long-term contract, but he lowers his cap hit in 2020. I think he might bite on that because he doesn't really need the money, A. B, he could get more money through the long term, a lot more money. And C, I don't think he's happy with how the season ended, and I think he feels he might have that. He seems like the type of guy that would want to take a pay cut to make the team better. And so that's a possibility. I do not agree that they should cut Griffin, though. They already restructured his contract, but he had a good year. And I don't want to add more needs on the defensive line because they love drafting defensive linemen. And they already have a need at 3 tech next to Griffin. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I want to limit the amount of needs that this team has. I don't even think you can cut Rhodes either, because I don't know. You don't know what you have in Hughes, and Trey Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander contracts are up. I don't know if one of you guys wanted to go to Sport Track and type in Xavier Rhodes' contract and let us know what the dead cap is on that. I'm actually going to do that really quickly, because I seem to remember it being a lot. I don't think you can just cut him because you're just going to eat a lot of money. And so I think he'll restructure. I mean, I can't imagine he wouldn't. But I think that you need him for at least one more year. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable losing him. Especially, okay, so his dead cap space next year is $4.8 million. Yeah, that's not happening. Yikes. I mean, that's, I don't know, it's doable. It was $30 million in 2017, then it was 20, then it was 17 million if they were to cut him this last season. So yeah, but I still don't think cutting him is the answer. Again, I want to limit the openings that this team has because they have limited cap space. So you want, especially with the team run by Zimmer and Spielman, who can't say no to Zimmer, you don't want them to prioritize the defense yet again over this offensive line. It's going to come down to this offensive line. Obviously, it's going to come down to this offense. This defense hasn't shown, even at its peak, the ability to do things like the 49ers defense is doing right now. And because of that, you need an offense that is explosive, that can put up 30 points a game or more. And that's what this Vikings offense did in the wins. They almost had 31 points a game when they won. And then when they lost, they had 17 points per game. Why is that? Because there's game plan issues, formation issues, but the offensive line, again, is just too much of a liability, especially with the quarterback that you have. And so I'm just worried if you cut guys who you could restructure, that you're going to make the defense worse anyway, and then you're going to end up drafting up corners and defensive ends 1-2 in the draft, and then maybe getting around to a left tackle who is a swing guy or something in the 4th round. I don't want that. Rocky says you can get a cheaper version of the D-line. I don't know who, though. I mean, I think Everson Griffin, again, will take a pay cut, even though he already did. Continuity, I think, is important. I don't know. I feel bad for him too. I'm not gonna lie. As a guy who has mental health issues myself, I root for the dude, and I think he definitely needs to take a pay cut though. $13.8 million next season. Dead cap space, 800,000. So what that means is that the team could cut him and really, pay under $1 million for it. What that means to Griffin and his agent is, what, you're 32, going to be 33. You had a good year, but you're out of your physical prime. You've had issues off the field. It would be really shitty for them to bring that up, but will be implied, I'm sure. And the team can basically cut you and think nothing of it. Have him, Linval Joseph, and Xavier Rhodes all making over $13 million a year. That is a problem. But I think, again, you can restructure those guys as opposed to cutting them. And I think that if you do that, you're not going to find a better version of somebody. I mean, having a guy like Griffin who's been in this offense or this defense for this long, who is a leader in the locker room, who plays well in this system, you bring in new guys, that's not a guarantee. And so I stick with continuity for multiple reasons, because I think you can get the price down enough for it to be similar to a free agent, because that's another argument they could make. Well, this guy who has similar stats, that's a free agent, will cost us this much. But we're loyal to you, so here's, whatever. I think that's what'll happen. But again, and I've said this multiple times before, we always do like a day 2 draft party somewhere, and I always talk about, like, try to limit any impulses Zimmer has to triple down on his defense, because he's like a kid in a candy store, and he loves chocolate, even though that chocolate is giving him diabetes, and this candy over here is actually what will help him. I don't know. That analogy went nowhere. You guys get what I mean. Rocky says cut Elfline and Reef too. More savings. Need to improve up front and going nowhere. Man, you are just... I want to see your Madden team just cutting fools left and right. Let's look at Riley Reef. This is fun. Let's look at Riley Reef's contract. I sure wish those people didn't call me, because I'm going to have to post multiple shows. Riley Reef is $4.4 million if you cut him. I have a feeling that Elfline might be more than that, but actually probably not, because he's on his rookie deal still. But Reef is set to make $13 million as well. That's gonna have to either change, or, I mean, he's a placeholder at this point. But that's kind of a sticky situation. I didn't know his contract was that much. Yeah, Elfline is yeah, I'm stupid. Obviously he's on his rookie deal. His dead cap would be $234,000. I would not be against that move. he's only $1 million against the cap anyway. So I don't think there'd be any harm in keeping him for depth or continuity. But and maybe Samia will take over. I mean, he's more of a project than I think. At least I thought he was going to be, considering where he came from and how good that unit was. But since his salary, since it's $1 million, I say keep him. Riley Reef, man, that's a conundrum. I mean, God, you got Reef at 13.5, Linval, Rhodes, that's 26.39. That's 52 million for those 4 players. Probably 55 million with all the decimals and all that. That's not how decimals work. Ugh. I went to high school in 7th grade for math. I had to get a ride from the janitor after lunch and go to Edison High School in Northeast Minneapolis when I was 7th grade. So how old would I have been? 12? And that was not, it was like Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer without like a happy ending. It was horrible. Now I don't even know how to add. Yay, booze. And apparently, whatever is wrong with my lungs. So yeah, I don't, this stuff, I don't think you can just cut everybody. That dead cap's money is too high. I think there's a ton of restructures coming though. I think that'll be the story of the offseason. And with that money, hopefully they can find, I don't know what to do, you guys. I'm seriously like very concerned. I don't think I felt this low about the Vikings. Well, that's not true. After the NFC Championship game, I was pretty down for like a month, maybe 2 months. But they had cap space, and they picked up Cousins, and they picked up Sheldon Richardson. Now it just feels like they really put all their chips down to win last season. That was like peak. Max salary cap, every player they wanted, so on and so forth. They were hoping the offensive line would mesh quickly, and it just feels like the window's closing, and I haven't felt that way. Really. I felt like they blew the Eagles game, but I didn't feel like it was over. I kind of feel like, man, how would this team ever beat the 49ers? Outside of Garoppolo having to put the game on his shoulders, and he's not shown that he's an elite quarterback yet. That might be the story of the Super Bowl. I don't know. We'll talk about that too. But let's see what Tang says. Pay Harris. Oh, you have to keep Harris. I mean, that has to be, outside of the offensive line, priority, one of the priorities, the main priorities. Keep Anthony Harris, for the love of God. All respect to Sendejo. The Vikings haven't had a true compliment to Harrison Smith up until now, and he's the only guy on this defense, a scheme that isn't known for creating turnovers, that creates turnovers. They have to keep him. They have to. They have to. Tang says it's not like these guys need the money. They get paid more than they're performing. You know what's sad about that? It's funny you said that, because I talked about that on The Scoop today. 75% of NFL players go bankrupt within 2 years of retirement. We had Chris Cluey on Morning Joe's a couple years ago, and there was a lot of talk about the CBA, I think, at the time, and I asked him why NFL contracts are so crappy compared to other sports leagues, because especially at the time, this was before Cousins got his guaranteed money. These contracts were just jokes. You could just rip them up for the most part. There weren't really contracts. And he said it's because the NFL players financially are very overextended, and they can't strike because they need their game paychecks. Other leagues have the leverage. You don't need to strike to get that leverage, but you need to be able to have the threat of a strike. So the owners know, okay, we have to give them better terms because if we jerk them around, they might strike, and that'll be horrible for the league. And so I've always found it odd that at like the rookie symposium they have, and I know that it's better now and they have like financial management and planners, but for a long time it was like a feeding frenzy of just really shady businessmen who would pitch things to these 20-year-old guys who just got millions of dollars and saying, well, you should invest in my restaurants or this chain or that or this, and they do it, and they it's a lot of work to run a restaurant. Like 4 to 5 restaurants go under in the first 5 years. Like it's the hardest industry to break into, but these guys usually try to open a restaurant or a club. There's all the things that they spend money on, cars that depreciate, so on and so forth, and then so you get in a situation where these guys need this money. And I'm just speculating on Rhodes' situation, but you have to think like the pressure someone like that is under. You have Adrian Peterson, who's still playing, under the guise of he's trying to break Emmitt Smith's record, even though he's not going to. He still looks really good, but, he's got incredible amounts of child support to pay. And it seems like sometimes these guys are just playing because they need to, not because they want to. And so I just thought it's funny you said that, because I know we always think like, well, this guy's a millionaire. You know what? He doesn't need the money. A lot of these guys are liquid in terms of liquidity, broke. I mean, Cluey said a lot of these guys are check to check. Like if they before their check clears, they're broke each week. And so that's part of it. I think things are different now. I hope some of these players are taking advantage of their social media profile and getting sponsorships. I just had a really good business idea. Oh my God. Wow. Anyway, since you guys are here, I'll get back to your comments in a second, but I do want to remind you that our message board and social media stuff is relaunched. So we have a message board, we have a live chat function for live events. That's in the lower left-hand side of both VikingsTerritory.com and PurplePTSD.com. We have the ability for you guys to create user groups. We have, it's essentially Twitter. But it's for Vikings fans only. So if you go to like PurplePTSD.com and click on Global Activity, for example, you'll see that. It's really kind of cool, and I just want to invite you guys to join. I'll show you what it looks like here. Neat. Wow, we're getting lots of people joining. You can kind of see it. I'm hoping you can see it anyway. You see it? Or am I? Let's see here. This is great content, by the way. This is so frustrating. All right, I give up. Anyway, yeah, it'll be easier if you just go to purpleptsd.com and click on, what is it? Social Activity Hub. That's it. Click on that. But we're having a lot of discussions on the message board right now. One of them being, would you rather have Teddy or Kirk Cousins? That's a fun head scratcher. That's a good way to get things started. We're getting a ton of people joining. We're just hoping to get some more activity, some more debates, some more discussions. Tang says next year is the last year, in my opinion. If they still don't fix the line by next season, it's over. I don't think it's a coincidence that that's also the last year of Zimmer's and Spielman's contract. And so I think it's, the owners did come out and say they intend, the keyword there is intend, to keep Zimmer around for, ever. But this is the NFL. He has to produce. The fact that they got rid of George Edwards after the Niners game was a huge sign that things need to change and improve. And the question is whether or not they will. As I think you guys are debating here, that's a really hard question. If they haven't done it by now, it's kind of hard with your backs against the wall and less money to spend, and low draft picks. What do you do? I mean, one thing that is kind of amazing about this team is that they're always consistently pretty good. They're top 5 in terms of overall record as a franchise, and it's kind of a head scratcher because when you're consistently pretty good, you're never getting like the first overall pick. I think Khalil was the highest pick the team ever had, and that was 4. And so I guess that's part of being a Vikings fan is they're always pretty good. And they always keep our hopes up. They're never terrible, but again, under the Zimmer era, I've just never felt this claustrophobic and this like, okay, we're gonna have to restructure or cut some guys, and what do you do? I don't know. I mean, I haven't fully gotten my head around what I think they should do. Outside of keeping Kubiak. Keep Kubiak. If they bring somebody else in, that's it. We're gonna have to start talking about the show Vikings or something. I don't know. Rocky says, I want to look into what Trent Williams would cost. He has been like the guy that people have wanted the Vikings to go after forever. I think the last time that this was a discussion and articles were written about it, I think he was going to cost a lot in terms of a trade. He gets hurt a lot though, doesn't he? Isn't that the rub against him? But yeah, I would love that too. I mean, Tank says Trent Williams has issues with a tumor in his head. I hadn't heard that. That's really... Ooh, I'm going to read this article. He also obviously has familiarity blocking for Cousins, so that might help. I don't know if that would or not, but yeah, cancerous tissue removed from his scalp. And he was upset how the situation was handled by the team. He has 1 year left, fully guaranteed. Oh, okay. So he would have reported had the Redskins guaranteed the final 2 years of his contract. He now has 1 year left at $12.5 million, none of it guaranteed. Yeah, it's not looking good for him there. I don't know if they cut him. If that's the case, I say go for it. But I mean, I've had my hair's too long now, but I have a bald spot like right here because I had when I was younger, I had a cancerous mole removed from my head. It's not a big deal. Maybe it is. Maybe that's why my takes are so bad. I don't know, but that shouldn't affect him long term. I thought maybe it was like a brain tumor, but it seems like a scalp skin thing. That's super common. I don't know. I think Reef, you got to figure something out there, and left tackles, especially in free agency, that could, I don't know. You look at his price might be lowered because of his issues with the team, and some teams might not want that. He's been injured in his career a lot too. That'll lower the price, but good left tackles don't really ever hit the free agency market on that level. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, guys. But wasn't it fun watching the Packers just get dismantled? I mean, that was fun. It was fun seeing Rodgers. He was on Danica Patrick's show this week talking about religion. I think he's looking for some answers because things aren't looking good for him. Yeah, I agree. Tang says Williams' price could be lower due to age and medical reasons. All you really need from the dude is one good season, right? Based on the context of what we're talking about. It's pretty much this year or nothing. I know, the core of this team is locked in until 2023. But if they can't win now, I just don't see how they're going to win when they're in their mid-30s. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I really had fun. I'm glad you guys came back. I apologize for my absence. I will be back tomorrow at around 3 o'clock. I would love to continue this conversation on the message board. I'm going to put up a topic right after I get off the show about Trent Williams. We'll talk about that there. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow, and I'll turn on my do not disturb function on my phone so the show doesn't get cut into pieces. But this has been About the Labor Live. Love you guys.